Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Rodriguez, and I'm the policy coordinator for NASW New York. Welcome to the final event of the NASW New York CARES Spring 2026 Senior Series, Elder Abuse 101. The chapter extends our gratitude to our attendees and all of you who are here tonight to learn and expand your knowledge and to gain clarity and resources for the work that you do. We appreciate your time and your willingness to engage with us on this vital topic. Please note that this event does not offer CE credits, but we do hope that the content will still provide valuable insights and foster meaningful discussion. We would be nowhere without our partners, and we appreciate JASA for being here today. To ensure a smooth experience, we kindly ask that everyone remain muted while the presenter or guests are speaking. If you do have questions or comments, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Or if the presenter invites you to unmute, you may then ask your question. Please raise your hand in the case of a question, and a staff member will be monitoring the chat throughout the event and will make sure any questions are addressed. We ask that all attendees respect the NASW anti-harassment policy, which will be shared with you all shortly in the chat. Our goal tonight is to maintain an accountable and respectful environment for everyone and to provide information and resources to those who are seeking it. Additionally, we will be sending any materials and resources discussed today, as well as any info on upcoming opportunities with the chapter, to your email by no later than Monday morning. Thank you all for being with us here tonight, and we look forward to a productive and respectful conversation. Thank you so much to Florian Edwards, LMSW, Senior Director of Protective Services at JASA, for being here today. And I'm going to share her presentation with you all. Sorry, one moment. Here we go. Hmm. Can you all see that okay?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Amanda, can you please move the slide deck along, please? And you could go to the next one. Okay. So good morning, everyone. My name is Florian Edwards, and I'm the Senior Director of JASA's Protective Services Program. I would like to thank Amanda for the warm introduction and to Angelique and the NASW New York City chapter for hosting this event and providing space for us to discuss the crucial topic of elder abuse. I appreciate all of you for taking time out of your day for us to share space and learn. I know for some of you, you may have already a foundational knowledge of elder abuse, and others, this may be something new for you, but either way, I believe that the content here will be very useful in your professional and or your personal
Hi,
lives.
Florian. Sorry to interrupt quickly. But if you could just try to speak up a little bit louder, I think some people are having some issues hearing.
Okay, I will. Hold on one second. Okay, is this better?
Much better for me.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So again, I hope this presentation is fruitful and that this will be helpful information for you all to utilize in both your personal and in your professional lives. Next slide, please. So the learning objectives for us today is to identify and differentiate the major forms of elder abuse, to recognize different patterns, to work together to apply practical intervention strategies, and also to utilize a person-centered and trauma-informed lens in working with older adults who are experiencing elder abuse and developing realistic client-driven safety plans that reflect that older adult individuals' readiness and capacity and their work in their real life capacities. So again, this is really not about just understanding elder abuse and what elder abuse is. It's really about what you will do differently the next time something doesn't feel right in the work that you're doing with someone who's an older adult, or if someone discloses that they're at risk of harm, what would you do next? Next slide, please. So, statistically, it is reported that 1 in 10 older adults experience elder abuse, but most cases go unreported. Older adults who experience elder abuse interact with social service providers every day and other people. They may be seeing their doctor, a social worker, a case manager, a nurse, many people who may be working with them. They may be going to an older adult center. They may be interacting with people who are helping them with different type of services, home delivered meals and so forth. However, the challenge is, what do you do when you do encounter someone who may be at harm? Because again, the question is not about whether or not you've encountered elder abuse, but how do you recognize it and how do you address it if it comes to your attention? Next slide, please. So, there are primarily 6 forms of elder abuse, and I can honestly spend 3 hours talking about each form of elder abuse and the different components and scenarios that encapsulate each of these forms of abuse. But for time purposes, I'm going to speak very briefly about each of the forms of elder abuse and give a little scenario of what that may look like. So, the most common form of elder abuse that we see in our practice is financial abuse. So this could be, for example, if an older adult who goes to the bank and she's been able to, or he's been able to manage their affairs over time, and all of a sudden they're going to the bank and saying to the bank, my nephew or my son or daughter is going to handle everything, and all of a sudden they have no ability to manage their own finances. It could also show up, for example, in your work where someone is said to, for example, have a power of attorney who's supposed to be helping them manage their affairs, and suddenly the person is in rental arrears, they have disconnect notices, or a person may not have access to their banking, their checkbooks, their bank cards, things like that, and suddenly they're in financial crisis. So financial abuse shows up in many different ways, and even in the work that we do together, with older adults, you may see that they may be having some financial challenges. Another form of elder abuse is neglect or caregiver neglect or self-neglect, right? Sometimes the neglect could be active, where someone who's causing harm is intentionally seeking to harm that older adult. Sometimes the situation is such where it's passive neglect, where they don't intend to harm the older adult. They may be working, part of the sandwich generation, doing things, but do not take the time to really make sure that older adult needs are taken care of. So that could show up where someone, for example, may be needing to go to dialysis 3 times a week, and all of a sudden the person is not going, the caregiver is not taking them to their appointments, or they're saying that the older adult has refused to go to get their medical care, when that may not be the case. They may be just isolating that person because they are causing harm. Okay. Another form that when people think of elder abuse, one of the first things they may think about is physical abuse, because that is something that you could see, right? You may see a black eye, a bruise on the face, a scratch. But the thing about physical abuse is it could be something that even we may not see, because we've had situations in our program where the person, for example, looked perfectly fine from the neck up. However, the person who was causing harm was burning them with cigarettes right up along their body. It was a situation where one time we thought one of the clients, for example, had alopecia because she had patches of hair missing, right? And people assumed, oh, it was alopecia. But what was really happening was, in our interview with her, was that she said her son was pulling her hair and her hair was thinning. The son was pulling her hair, and that was why she had the patches of hair that were missing. But if we didn't interview and ask the relevant questions, may have just made an assumption. So I'm going to say this throughout the presentation, that one of the things for us as providers is not to make assumptions, but to ask questions to make sure we're clear and whether or not something is abuse or it's not abuse. Okay. Another thing that we see all the time is emotional, verbal, or psychological abuse. Okay. So this could be where a client is suddenly withdrawn, quiet, appears anxious after interactions with the caregiver, or even say to you, I feel talked down or disrespected. The person is infantilizing me, not making me feel as though I'm a whole person, right? Treating me like a baby. Making me feel like I don't belong, that I'm not worthy, that I cannot make my own decisions. And this is how we often see emotional and verbal abuse happen. It sometimes happens where we're on the phone with someone and you could hear someone in the background cursing at them or calling them names. So this is very pervasive. And when we're talking about these different kind of elder abuse, I want you all to also understand that they're also not mutually exclusive. So if someone is experiencing financial abuse, it's likely that they may be also experiencing emotional or verbal abuse as well. It's usually not presented as one thing. Okay? So I have financial exploitation here twice. Um, but I'm jokingly saying this because this is so prevalent, right? So even for people, we have people who are multimillionaires, people who only have one source of income, and some people who have very limited income. They may be on public assistance or food stamps, but yet they're still being financially exploited, where someone is taking their food stamps card and not allowing that older person to eat and have adequate food, which is a form of abuse as well. And the final one that I'm going to speak about is sexual abuse. Is often very hard to detect. However, it could be something where, for example, a personal care attendant may be noticing some bruising, or that an older adult is maybe bleeding from an area, or even as we have some cases and we have clients go to the doctor, we sometimes say to the doctor, can you please run a full medical workup, including checking for sexually transmitted infections? And they're like, what? This person is 80. This makes no sense. And we're like, you should check anyway, because we absolutely have had situations where, for example, someone was homebound, nonverbal, and what we found out, because of the aide and her ability to see something just was not right, that we found out later after doing a medical workup that the son was sexually abusing his mother because her medical test came back with an STI. So someone who's nonverbal, unable to make decision, that comes up in the blood work, you just never know. Okay. You could go to the next slide. And again, one of the forms that I didn't speak about is also abandonment. And that could be, for example, someone leaving someone in a facility and not picking them up, not following up with discharge planning from a hospital. It could also be situations where we have seen people become frustrated and leave someone in a shopping center and just completely abandon them. So that is also another form of abuse. Okay, so elder abuse, there's not, again, one clear indicator. As providers, we have to look and see what may be happening for that older adult. So it could be behavioral changes, right? Someone who was typically very outgoing and, for example, go to an older adult center, participate with their activities, and all of a sudden they're not doing those things anymore. They could be responsive to your phone calls, very much engaged, and suddenly they're withdrawn and they're not participating in activities as they used to. It could even be environmental changes, where suddenly you may be a visiting nurse or you may be going to the home and you notice that the home environment has gotten progressively worse. It's becoming cluttered. You're seeing bills that are piled up on the table, or you're hearing reports from third parties that there's some concerns about this person's environment. Again, we spoke about financial irregularities, but also it could also be the caregiver dynamic. How does that person interact when that person is around? Does that person who's said to be the caregiver or the trusted other, are they even allowing this older person to speak for themselves? Are you noticing that you used to be able to communicate with this older adult and now the person is controlling, not allowing them to be on the phone? These are all signs of potential elder abuse, and it's very important that you trust your professional intuition, but also be clear that before you pass judgment, that you verify this through your assessment and through your questioning with the older adult. I'm going to pause here and just ask Amanda if there's any questions in the chat so far to make sure I'm not missing anything.
I'm not seeing any questions so far, but if there are any questions, feel free all to drop them in the chat.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So In the event you recognize that something may not quite be right or an older adult discloses that maybe they may be at risk for elder abuse, it is important to have an understanding of what you should do. There is not one clear, for example, safety planning checklist that you could do. There's not one clear because every client may require different modalities, different ways to assist. But the one thing that I could say, if you suspect elder abuse, and please make sure you speak to your supervisor to see what potential next steps that you may need to take. Again, do not make assumptions or judgments. It is again important to ask the person who may be harmed what may be happening. And the key is to ensure immediate safety, right? Is this person at immediate risk right now where they may be potentially physically harmed? Is important that if you are working with an older adult, that as much as possible, try to separate the older adult from the potential abuser when possible, right? Because we've had situations where, for example, someone calls even the police and they're being interviewed together, right? Which is not safe because if someone is harming me, I am likely not going to say in front of anyone that, yes, I feel afraid, I'm afraid this person is causing me harm, because when you all leave, or when the police leaves, or when I leave the environment where I'm speaking with my social worker or therapist, I have to go home with that person, and there could be repercussions based on the information that I said. So again, it's very important that as much as possible, if you suspect that a person is being abused by someone, please make sure that if the person who's causing harm is around, that you find a way to interview that person separately and alone so that you optimize your ability to really find out what's going on in safety plan with the client. It's very important to use open, non-leading questions. So for example, asking a question like, do you feel safe at home? The person may say yes or no, but you may want to have more open-ended question where the person can describe a little bit more about what's happening, right? So are you able to make decisions on your own? The person says, yes, I can, or no, I can't. But you could reframe that question and ask, how are decisions made, for example, in your family? And what happens if you all don't agree? That is a very non judgmental, non leading question that is basically asking, what happens? Are you in charge of making decisions for yourself, or is someone making decisions for you? It also allows the older adult to open up and answer the question more thoroughly rather than giving you a yes or no answer, right? So, for example, if you say, has someone forced you to do something you don't want to do? What would be the response? Possibly yes or no. Not helpful, right? But if you reframe the question and you say, what happens if you're not comfortable with that decision? How are decisions made? The person might be able to give you more so that you could get more information and be able to have more foundational information to then decide if this person is really being harmed or not. And one of the most important things is be genuine, be open, and actively listen to the person who may potentially be at harm. Do not judge. Do not jump to conclusions. Do not try to resolve everything right away. Oh my goodness, the person may be at risk. I need to do something right now. Take it one step at a time, and again, be open and actively listen to that survivor. Pay attention to their body language, right? That is sometimes things that are often missed when we're doing a lot of meetings and things like that in a virtual capacity. But pay attention to that person's body language as well, because sometimes the body language will tell you more than sometimes an older adult is willing to say, because they may be afraid, they may not be trusting of the person that they're speaking to. So just provide and try to create the space for sharing and for active listening to occur. Okay, next slide, please. So, the big question, why is elder abuse often missed? Elder abuse is often missed for many, many reasons, right? Abuse rarely presents itself as obvious harm. It often shows up as trust, dependence, or family obligation. There could be cultural norms, religious beliefs, stereotypes. I have on here ageism that makes even us as providers not really see or identify or recognize that elder abuse may be happening. The older adult, for example, may not even identify what they're experiencing as being harmful to their self and their well being. There's also a lot of shame around elder abuse. How could this have happened to me? My son or my daughter is harming me, whether it be emotionally, financially. I don't want anybody to know about this. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. Oftentimes we hear, but I'm their mother. How could they do that to me? I'm their grandparent. I raised this person their whole life, right? How could this happen to me? They don't want anybody to know. And oftentimes there may be judgment, right? There's ageism, there's stereotypes in the way sometimes we even view older adults. And they don't want to be seen as incompetent. They don't want to be seen as not able to take care of themselves. And sometimes they want to handle the situation on their own. And there's also a power and control dynamic. If the person, whether it be a family member or a trusted other, is the person that is helping them with something, whether it be grocery shopping, picking up their medication, helping with bill paying, whatever that may be, there may also be a codependency on that, right? And sometimes in some cases, the person that we see, for example, if, for example, let's say you work at an older adult center or you're doing case management, I may come in with my mother and appear to be very helpful. But behind closed doors, there may be some areas of concern. So this is why it's very important to try to recognize the subtle signs that I spoke about earlier to try to see if there may be some cause for concern. Okay? And also in some older adults, they may have some cognitive issues, some physical impairments. So it may make them being willing to disclose anything very challenging. Okay? Next slide, please. So, as service providers, when engaging with older adults or clients who may be experiencing abuse, the goal is not for us to look at every client and try to prove abuse or see what's going on. The main thing for us is to try to create the conditions where truth can safely emerge, which is the importance of not infantilizing the older adult, like treating them like, they don't have control over their own decision making, slowing down the pace a little bit in our questioning. I know for some of us, for example, we may have assessments that are due that are time sensitive, so you're trying to rush through and get all the information answered quickly. But it's important to slow down, really listen to the older adult of what it's saying, and don't be too quick to pass judgment and be too urgent in your questioning, because sometimes a slower pace may be able to give you the information that you may need. Again, avoid confrontation. Don't label anything, right? Sometimes some people may say, well, you're being abused. I got a referral that says you're being abused. That is not helpful, right? So it may be better to say something like, I understand that there may be some concerns at home, or there may be some challenges that you're experiencing at home. How can I be helpful? I'm here to listen. I'm here to support you, right? And don't just go, right? Are you being abused? That is, again, not going to be helpful. And again, if you're not sure what to do, there are programs and organizations that are willing and able to help you. I know that some of my elder justice providers, colleagues are here as well that specialize in this work. We are here to support, and the resources are going to be towards the end of this presentation. But again, if you're not sure what to do, if this comes to your attention or your gut is telling you something is not quite right here, reach out to your supervisor, reach out to us as elder justice providers. And again, the information will be shared later on. We are here to help. We're willing to do consultations and to ensure that if you have a question, we'll be able to answer those questions and support you as well as the client as much as possible. We also have organizations such as Adult Protective Services, the police department, the district attorney's offices. We also have legal services that are willing to assist. At JASA, for example, we have the legal services program where they could help older adults who, for example, may need an order of protection. Some of you may know that there's a great deal of deed theft going on, where family members or even strangers may be taking an older adult's property. So there are resources out there that can help. So please, if you're not sure what to do, reach out, ask for help. Again, we are here to help as much as possible. Okay? So the next slide, please. So again, it's very important how we ask matters. Okay? Again, saying to an older adult, are you being abused, may shut that person down, right? So for survivors, they might prioritize their relationship, again, whether it be with a family member, a third party, over safety. I'm not going into too much about financial scams and stranger abuse because we could again be here for another 2 hours. So when I'm speaking about the elder abuse cases that we will discuss here, it's mostly about people who are experiencing abuse within their families, with a trusted other, whether it be a friend or a neighbor, people who have some type of relationship with each other. But again, with some cases, imagine you being someone's father and your son or your daughter is abusing you, but you also love them, you've taken care of them, but you also may depend on them for some help. So it's very complicated, a very complicated situation. So sometimes with the older adults that they're working with, they may prioritize that relationship over their own safety. They know they're being harmed. They know when someone is saying something inappropriate to them, it hurts them. They know if, for example, the person is not helping them to the doctor, is going to impact their ability to get better and to heal and to live a quality life. But it's my son, it's my daughter, it's my grandchild. I want them to be helped. I know that I need help, but is there a way that you can help them? Right? So it is very complicated, complex dynamics. And again, for us as providers and people who want to be helpful, the key is for us to listen, to try to provide the space for safety and safety planning based on what the client wants for themselves and not what we necessarily want for them. And for us to always understand that the client has a right to self-determination. It is not just a document that we fill out or we completed the safety plan, right? With the client. The goal is to make sure that whatever safety plan you develop with that client, that it is realistic, it is what the client wants, and it's something that the client is going to be able to do in the event that they need assistance. Okay? Next slide, please. So, when we're talking about safety planning, again, as I said previously, safety planning is not always about removing all the risk. It's expanding that person's ability to have some control, to provide them with options, and the ability for that person to act within their own reality, not in terms of what we want them to do, but what is going to work for that particular client in their own situation. I've been doing this work for approximately 20 years, and there is not one time that I have said in my work with someone who's being harmed that I have all the answers and I'm just going to check off this checkbox and I'm going to tell them, call 911, go into your room and lock the door, speak to this attorney. It does not work that way. With every single client, you have to work to develop practical safety planning techniques and tips for them that is going to work for them. Okay, so the plan should be real. They should be real world risk along all forms of abuse. Because again, if someone comes in and says, my son is being verbally abusive, my daughter is being verbally abusive, explore if something else is going on as well and plan for that as well. For some of our clients that we work with, if I know, for example, that they are being verbally abused by their daughter or their son, I often ask them with developing different safety planning tips with them. One of the things I speak to them about as well is, have you done your advanced directives? And why is that important? Because if my child or my grandchild or my niece or nephew or whomever is abusing me, and I know that at some point down the road, I may lose my physical or my mental capacities, whether it be next week or 10 or 20 years down the road. I want to be able to put in place, while I have the mental capacity to do so, put in place my advanced directives around my finances, around my medical care, so that at least I'll have some comfort in knowing that the person who's causing me harm may not be the person who's going to take over my finances or be able to make medical decisions for me, right? And sometimes it can be hard because sometimes the person who's causing harm may be the only person in that client's life who they have, right? So again, it's not always linear. So it's very important to just explore with the person that you're working with. Do they have any additional supports that may be helpful for them in the community, whether it be a family, a friend, a neighbor, anybody else who they trust who might be able to assist them, right? Again, you focus on incremental steps that increase safety over time because with some cases, there's not an immediate fix, right? So for some people, the safety planning may start with just them being able to know that they have options, that there's something that they could do to keep themselves safe. Whether it could be something like, I'm going to be able to put a block on my bedroom door. I'm going to work towards that my mail is no longer coming to the home because every time the mail comes directly to the home, my granddaughter opens the mail and goes through all of my banking accounts and I have no access. So the safety plan could even be having the mail, if the person has the ability to go out, have the mail go to a safe PO box, or having the mail go to someone else that they trust so that their banking or their financial information and other things is not coming to the home. So again, each safety plan should be catered towards that client's individual needs. Okay? Does anyone have any questions before I move on? Is there anything else in the chat?
Florian, do we have permission to share your PowerPoint with the registrants tomorrow?
Absolutely.
All right, great. There was a question about that in the chat, so that will be sent in the post follow-up resources. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so again, part of examples of practical safety strategies, again, identify trusted individuals if they are one and establishing safe ways to reach them. So one of the things that within our program that is very important, one of the first things we do when we call people, besides obviously saying our name, is we ask them, are you safe to speak and do you have privacy? Which are two very different questions, right? Are you safe to speak now? And do you have privacy? Meaning, is anyone else in the room and can you speak freely without any risk to you? With our clients all the time, we speak to them about code words. And this is very important because, for example, you could be having a session over the phone with the client and in walks the alleged abuser and they get caught off guard, right? So it's important, for example, sometimes when I'm speaking with the clients that I work with, sometimes I'll just call and I'll say I'm calling from a different organization because I know for a fact the person lives with somebody. And if I say where I'm from, it may be something that's going to let the person know that, I'm calling from a program that may be trying to help that older adult. Or I might say to them, if you're unsafe at any reason during this conversation, just say something like, the dog is barking or something like that so that I know that there's an area of concern at this point. Sometimes I ask the client, but maybe you just need to say yes or no answers, right? So there's been situations where I'm speaking to someone, everything is fine, and in walks the alleged abuser from coming in from work or coming in from outside. The person says the code word, and I ask them, are you safe? Are you okay? Do you need me to call for help? Yes or no? And then I say to them, if you are unsafe, you could text me something, you could call me, you could let me know, and we say the code word, which is indicating to me that the person may be at risk. I also make sure, because most of us work 9 to 5, whatever your hours are, you're not always available 24 hours a day. So there's some resources here, but also work with the person to develop what happens at 3 o'clock in the morning if you need help. What can you do? Where could you go? Who could you call? And that's also very important as well, right? One of the things that we're going to talk about also is securing or duplicating essential documents, like maybe a client ID, copies of their card if they feel comfortable sharing that information with you, and if it's within the scope of the organization in which you work with. Because in some cases, we've had an older adult where their alleged abuser takes their banking card. They get a new banking card, it comes, then it gets stolen again. They have their IDs, their marriage certificates, their birth certificates, and things like that, and they have no one where they could keep it safe. So, in some cases, and again, if your organization will allow, some people say to us, can you make a copy of this? Because I don't trust that if I leave these documents here, that they'll be safe at home. We also speak with them if they have the ability to get a safe deposit box so they could have them there, and letting someone else that they know trust know where that information and those documents are. So that's also another way in terms of safety planning to help protect that person's identity, their documents, and so forth that they may need down the road in order to get some type of assistance. Again, identifying any safe spaces, times, or situation or communication that there may be problematic disclosure. Sometimes with the older adult, we ask them, is there someone else if you don't feel safe that you could go to keep safe even for 24 hours? Depending on your organizational capacity, in some cases, we may try to get the person a hotel or work with different organizations such as the Weinberg Center to see if, for example, that person needs a shelter for a couple of days to keep them safe because the situation with the older adult is so, with the alleged abuser, I'm sorry, is volatile. There are programs in New York City through Weill Cornell called VEPT, which is the Vulnerable Elder Protection Team, that if the older adult feels at risk, and they're willing to go to the hospital for a couple of days so that they could be assessed by a social worker and be safe for those 2 or 3 days while they're in the hospital. That program also is available if people need assistance, right? So again, it's about recognizing early signs, speaking to the client even about de-escalation techniques. What can they do in the event they know what the person who may be causing harm, what the trigger is, and not to escalate by arguing back sometimes, or trying to see what they could do and just going back and forth because it's not helpful. The situation just gets heightened. What could they do to de-escalate the situation and remove themselves so they're not in further harm? Okay. And also, what is important, and also what we do even within our elder justice program, is I say to my team, in every contact you have with the client, it is not only important to safety plan, but see if even the safety plan, for example, that you developed last month may be relevant this month, right? So you may think, okay, I developed a safety plan for my client, everything is good, but things may have changed. So it's important to always ask the person you're working with, we developed a safety plan maybe last month. Is the safety plan still working for you? What has worked? What has not worked? Maybe we could come up with something else together to work to ensure your safety. So it takes active communication, active involvement, and really listening and working with that older adult who may be experiencing elder abuse to work together to come up with that safety plan. Okay, next slide, please.
We do have one question from Sydney in the chat.
Sure.
What kind of resources or safety options would you recommend to clients who need help after hours that would not alarm a potential abuser?
Can you repeat the question again?
What kind of resources or safety options would you recommend to clients who need help after hours that would not alarm a potential abuser?
So again, it depends on the situation and what is going on. And I could go through a plethora of different things that might be useful, right? So it could be, for example, if they have a cell phone, like even calling 911, calling 988, right, which is a crisis hotline. I believe it used to be called New York City Well, but I think they changed the name. So sometimes I give that to clients. There are some programs that have 24-hour hotline crisis intervention, like Safe Horizon. I know their number by heart, 1-800-621-HOPE, that may be able to help someone. Sometimes, like I said, we're able to provide some lock changes, or if that's possible, so the person can keep safe in their room. But it's difficult to say what to do after hours because it really depends on the situation, right? Also with the what I was talking about, the 988 number, the reason why sometimes I think it works is because it has various options. If someone cannot speak, you could text with the 988 number, right? They have phone conversations. They also have email. So they have different ways in which someone who may be at risk can be able to get some help and resources. For some people, even having a life alert, right? Where it's like a silent button that they could press the button, and if needed, someone could come to their assistance. So again, it's different things that you could do in the event it is after hours and the person cannot get helped. I hope that answers your question. I can't see the chat, so Amanda, you have to help me out.
Sydney says thank you, and Chantel said this workshop is greatly appreciated and informative. So I think that it answered the question.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to be quite frank and honest. I'm kind of rushing through things because I want to be able to give you guys as much information as possible and leave room at the end for any potential questions. Because again, this workshop could be an all-day workshop just because elder abuse is so complicated, it is so complex. And although there may be some nuances that make something common, like it's an older adult, they may be experiencing financial abuse, verbal abuse. Every single case is different. There is not one case that is the same. And again, everything has to be tailored to meet the needs of the client and where they are, because some people may not be ready. They could disclose that they're being abused to you, but they may not be ready to take any steps. And we have to be okay with that, but present them with options, resources, and circle back to them and let them know that if they are ready and when they are ready, that whether the organization or someone else will be there to help them if needed, because not everyone is ready. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the slide. And again, talking about what you do matters. Again, like I said, each case is unique. And there's a difference between suspicion and action, and that's where the protection for that older adult begins. And again, if you have a case you're not sure, speak to your supervisor. Go to, for example, an elder justice provider or someone who is a more of an expert in the field to get the help that you need, because there are programs and organizations which I'll share in the resource that are out there that is willing to help, right? Because as it says in this bullet, in many cases you may be the first and only professional position to recognize the risk, because unfortunately elder abuse is not taught everywhere. It is not something that people like to talk about, but it happens all the time. And again, you will never be in a field where you say, oh, I've never experienced elder abuse. If all of you here are service providers or students or doing internships and you're working with anybody who's an older adult, I'm guaranteeing you 99.9% someone that you're working with is experiencing elder abuse. And again, it's about whether or not you recognize it. But if you are working with older adults, you're likely working with someone who is dealing with elder abuse. For example, you work in an older adult center, you have 50 people, the chances are at least 5 people sitting there playing bingo, going on the trip, and participating, and you may see them actively involved, are experiencing elder abuse, right? Because again, it doesn't have to be a bruise. It could be something subtle, verbal abuse, taking someone's debit card, financially exploiting them, people moving into people's apartments and not leaving and causing them harm. So there's just so many things that could be happening in someone's life that places them at risk, right? So as I spoke about, it could be subtle shifts in behavior, their environment, the caregiver dynamics could be the early warning signs of elder abuse, right? An effective response is rarely about certainty. Again, it's about noticing, naming the concern, and taking the appropriate step to see what can be done to help that older adult if they're ready. And I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it is very true. And the service providers in the room could attest to that. Elder abuse intervention is complex, but failure to act can carry real consequences and safety for that older adult's well being. And we do have a lot of work to do, just even as social work professionals in the School of Social Work, in different professions, about how to recognize and how to deal with someone who may be experiencing elder abuse. Because at this point, for example, the only entity that is mandated to report elder abuse is Adult Protective Services. No one else has to report elder abuse, right? So it's very important for us to be the voice for that voiceless, right? Be the voice for older adults. Come to trainings like this. That's why I'm so appreciative for all of you to take the time to be here, because the more we know, the more we could do to help and to protect and safeguard older adults who may be at risk. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so since we have time, we have about 15 minutes left. I'm just going to do a quick case vignette, and if you can unmute or you could put things in the chat, I would just like to have us have a brief 5 minute conversation about this case vignette that I have here, because this is something that could be very common in the work that you do. So I'm just going to read it. So Miss M, I'm going to call her Miss M, is a 70-year-old client who was previously consistent with services, but recently begun missing appointments and becoming harder to reach. When contact is made, the client appears withdrawn, while a family member increasingly speaks on their behalf. The client who was once jovial and talkative is now withdrawn and non communicative. Staff note decline in self care, non medication compliance, and difficulty meeting her basic needs. So, just in terms of what we talked about today, what would you as a service provider be noticing, and what would you potentially do next?
Feel free to raise your hand or drop your answers in the chat to answer the case.
I'm just going to give everybody a minute to think about it and to either unmute and respond or just put your comments and your thoughts in the chat. And this is not a test, so nobody's going to get a grade. There's no right or wrong answer, so it's okay.
Anne says decline in ADLs.
Thank you, Anne.
Lumi says, I am noticing the client is not as jovial and talkative as previously. Sabrina says, noticing change in behaviors, try to talk to her alone.
So thank you so much for your feedback. So I want to be clear, everything that you all said is good, and is the right thing to do. But I'm going to give you two examples here. It could be that the person is very jovial and talkative and then becomes non withdrawn and non communicative, right? Just because they're just not in the best of moods. So I want us to always think that just because you see something, don't always assume something is wrong, but it can be a red flag, right? So I appreciate the comment that says, try to talk to the client alone and maybe just explore if there's something that could be going on, right? Because what is important here is the client who was once jovial, talkative, and now withdrawn is also the additional risk that we talk about, right? A decline in their self care, non medication compliance, difficulty in meeting their basic needs when they once were able to. So it could be that even the caregiver could be stressed out and there's something going on. It could not be elder abuse, but the key here is to gather as much information as possible and try to explore with that client what may be going on. Are they at risk of harm? Is everything, okay within the home? I noticed that, you're not taking your medication as often. Is there anything that I could help you with, right? Who's responsible for helping you with the medication? How could we help that person? Because sometimes, and what we haven't talked about here, is intentional harm versus non-intentional harm, right? Maybe the caregiver may be stressed out and they're not managing well, and maybe they need some caregiver support. However, even in that, if you're burnt out or you're stressed out, it does not give you the right to harm, to be disrespectful, to feel as though you have, because I am the power of attorney, now I have access to their accounts, or I'm going to take the money and pay it back later. It's okay. It is not okay. Even if the person lacks the capacity to make their own decision, they have the right to know what is going on with their finances. They have the right to be treated with respect and dignity. They have a right to be involved in the decision making about their lives. So we don't want to pass judgment and think that, yes, this person is in an abusive situation. We want to talk to the client, get the information, and then see if there are causing harm, what we could do to mitigate the risk and help them and safety plan with them. Okay? Does anybody else have any thoughts or anything that they want to add
We
in
have
terms of what
one
we
more thought
mentioned?
in the chat. Oh, sorry. We have one more thought in the chat from Xiomara. She said the CM will call the client to find out how she is doing and if anything occurred.
Thank you, Ziamara. Hope I'm saying your name right. Is there anything you want to elaborate about that? What would prompt you to make the call to the client?
Oh, yes, Siomaya. Yes, I will try to reach out to the client to find out how she's doing, how she's feeling, and if any new event, like anything could happen to her. So I don't want to be guessing. So I want to hear from her that everything is okay. And if any changes, if I find out that she doesn't want to disclose anything and her behavior is like trying to hide something, I will try to conduct a home visit just for wellness check.
So, Ziamara, it's good that you said that you will call to check on the client if something is telling you that something isn't right. And over the phone,
Mhm,
especially if we believe that the person is living there that's causing harm or know that the person is maybe there,
mhm,
important to ask, are you safe to speak? Do you have privacy? Right? Always
mhm,
ask that question just in case, because you want to make sure that that person has the ability to answer your questions freely. And depending on what your organization is, because I don't want to give you what we do here within our program, but
mhm,
if you know you could develop a code word in the event you cannot speak, just let me know I cannot speak. Even if they say, you know what, I can't speak at this time, that's okay. And maybe you could circle back to them, but just always ask the person, is it safe and do you have privacy to speak, especially if you suspect elder abuse and the person who may be causing harm may be around and be intervening or listening to that older person as they're sharing their experience. So thank you for your comments and being willing to unmute yourself and speak. I really appreciate it.
mhm.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the next slide. I'm just going to speak a little bit about some of the resources, and there's many, but I just try to put the basic ones here. So if you all did not know, in every borough in New York City, there is an elder justice program. I listed all of them here, and I know some of my colleagues are here, and I want to give a tremendous shout out to all of my colleagues who are doing the elder abuse work every day. So I have a list including their intake number of all the programs and where they're located, that do direct elder justice work. So all of that information is there. All of us provide individual supportive counseling. We assist with security devices and lock changes if needed. We assist older adults who may need assistance with getting orders of protection. Some of our programs, not all of our programs, have attorneys. JASA does, that works within the program to help. For example, if someone needs help with, let's say they have deed theft or there's foreclosure issues. So you could call each program if needed. I know all of us do consultation, and we also go out into the community and do presentations with older adults and professionals as well. So these are all the providers of elder justice services within New York City. Next slide, please. In addition, I also listed all the family justice centers throughout each borough. And the family justice centers are what they call one-stop shopping for domestic violence survivors and elder abuse survivors as well. Within the family justice center, they have different organizations. They have the police department, um, the district attorney's office. All of those things are within one place. But oftentimes, if there is an older adult, I'm going to say this disclaimer, if there is an older adult, the Family Justice Center provider may do the immediate safety planning, but they will likely refer those individuals to one of the elder justice providers. Okay, next slide. And I'm not going to go through everything, but for the sake of time. Again, in each borough, there are district attorney's office. Some district attorney's office has specialized units for older adults who are experiencing elder abuse. I have that information there as well. I also have the information for the police department. And I know that in some cases, some people are not trusting of law enforcement, but there are some amazing police officers and people who are doing the work to work with older adults. With our elder justice programs. We work with the police department quite often, and in some cases, we even work with them to place clients on what is known as the high propensity list, which means that the police department will go and visit the older adult at random times just to check on them and ensure their safety. So there are different things that NYPD could do. And I also wanted to highlight the Crime Victim Assistance Program, which is through Safe Horizon, where they have an advocate that is embedded in every borough. In every police precinct that also does work with people who are experiencing elder abuse. And what makes CVAP a little bit different is if, for example, someone has reported elder abuse and that police report comes into the police department, the CVAP social worker or advocate will then review that domestic incident report. And I'm going to again highlight the importance of our elder justice program. And they usually refer those clients to the elder justice program for ongoing follow up and work. Okay, so I'm not going to go through every single resource I have here, but you all have the information. And as Amanda said, the PowerPoint will be shared with everyone. And again, we are here to help, we're here to assist. JASA has a help center number that is going to be located there again. I'm going to say it out loud. The number is 212-273-5272. Again, that number is 212-273-5272. So if you need a consultation, you have any questions, you need a presentation, or you have general inquiries, you could also contact that main number and they'll be happy to assist and direct you in the right direction. So with that, I want to thank all of you for being here. And again, thank NASW and the C.A.R.E.S program for allowing me to be here and share this important work and this information. And I'm hoping that the information that you all have will give you a foundational knowledge and be able to help you all help any older adult who comes in that may be at risk and need your assistance. And I appreciate all of you for all the hard work you do because it is not easy work that we're doing in this very challenging time that we're living in. But I want all of you to be optimistic, keep keeping on, keep doing the work because people need us and we need each other. So let's continue to work together, keep doing the work together and making a difference in the lives of the people that we serve. So thank you again. And I'm going to pass it to Amanda to close. Thank you all again.
Thank you so much, Florian, for an amazing presentation and great resources for helping everyone do the work that they do. We have some great feedback in the chat, and I really appreciate everyone for attending today and hope you will all enjoy your day. We will get the post-event resources along with the PowerPoint and any information shared by Florian to you no later than Monday morning. Thank you so much for coming today, and we will also share any opportunities for our CARES events that are upcoming. Just a quick shout out. Next week we will have a joint town hall with 1199 around social work salaries. And so please look out and stay tuned for that event if you're willing to get engaged with that conversation as well. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.